Hi, JD of Brushes here, and we have finally a new video. And it's brought to you, of course, by the Marker Brush Pack. And I actually did add a kind of a new set of brushes, and they're just fine liners. And all I did was I picked the first marker brush, the fine marker brush, in the first kind of 25 brushes, and I just adjusted it to kind of look like a fine liner, the type you would use for sketching where the ends of the lines would bleed. And I think they look pretty cool for architectural type of stuff, interior stuff. I'm not so sure if it works for like product design sketches, but I do like how the pen fine liners kind of look, at this kind of angle or viewpoint. So yeah. So I actually did a very rough initial sketch with a simple pencil brush, and I just needed to kind of lay out the scene so I can kind of ink it easier. And be more, I want to be able to plan out my piece as much as I can, and I actually don't want to take too long in planning out my pieces, but I think I think it just looks better if you actually do some basic planning. And I believe I'm not sure where I heard this concept, but I believe John Singer Sargent would actually kind of sketch out certain watercolor marks. And so he essentially planned out his very impressionistic strokes. And I thought that was interesting. Now I'm not sure if that's actually true or if it's just hearsay. But yeah. I think it's nice to have some kind of initial sketch in the beginning. And if you're making your straight lines in Photoshop, just make sure you can, or you're familiar with the kind of shift thing where you can hold the pen down, hold shift, and then click the other point of the line, and then a line simply appears. And it's actually pretty neat. And I actually thought that you needed to use the line tool or the pen tool to make those kinds of straight lines, but there is a trick. And it's all about holding down the shift key and then just picking out the points with your pen. And so after I did the line work, I'm focusing now on some shadows. To me, they're the kind of the purest or the most core, the most core blacks of the piece. And I try to make sure that in each phase it can kind of stand on its own. You know what I mean? And I think it's a good kind of philosophy to have while you're doing these kinds of phase by phase illustrations or sketches, renderings, whatever. I think it just helps to have like multiple layers of good work, and once you like compile them together into one piece, it just turns out even better. You know what I mean? By the way, it took so long to post a video, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that. It's my fault, and I have to claim responsibility for that. And I apologize. I do need to keep up and be more consistent with my posting sched. So yeah. And I actually did change the style of my renderings for the marker brush pack, and I think these I actually figured it out or discovered it by accident. I was just kind of playing around, and if you check out my Instagram, the first sketch in this style was where I figured out how to, or when I decided to kind of change the style in which I do my marker renderings, because these actually look like actual traditional marker renderings, and yeah, they just look more authentic and natural to me compared to the last few renderings where it's kind of digital, and it actually almost looks like it could be used for some kind of editorial piece, and it looks okay, but it doesn't give that feeling of the marker, and that's kind of what I actually want to do. So I am still using the same marker brush pack, but because of the method or process that I'm using right now, it looks more like an actual marker sketch. And then after I do the blacks face, I work on another folder, and that's where I work on the colors. And the colors are under a multiply mode, and that's pretty much it. And I make sure not to be so flat with the colors. And what I mean by that is I won't actually just use one color. I'll use a kind of usually a darker shade of the original color, and it just adds more of a gradient. And I think that's I've seen that in a lot of interior sketches, and I thought of applying it in my own work. And so if you're trying to practice rendering, I suggest having a reference, because if you're trying to practice your rendering, you're not there to practice your designing or your perspectives, right? You're there to practice your method or experiment at the very least with your process of rendering. So I would suggest if you're doing that you have some kind of reference in your canvas, or if you have a dual monitor system, put the reference on the side and just have something to kind of base the perspective on. And you can actually just trace the image if you're purely trying to practice your rendering, and it's fine. You can always make adjustments over the trace, which is cool. But the reason why I just kind of put the reference on the side and kind of just sketch it out is because I want to make it look a little more natural, and yeah. So yeah, that's my point. Anyway, as you can see those kind of gradient stuff where I have a kind of a lighter version and a darker version of a specific color. And yeah. And actually this sketch is kind of I'm still trying to figure out the proper system of sketching in terms of scale, because I've done renderings where I was experimenting with using a bigger fine liner and smaller marker brush sizes, and they don't look good. And I've tried using smaller fine liner sizes, and some kind of regular sized marker brush sizes, and they kind of turned out kind of unappealing, I would say. And I am constraining myself with the 1:1 crop ratio. And these sketches are technically designed for Instagram, so I do have to kind of figure out a proper way of sketching. If you compare this sketch to the very first marker sketch that actually looks like a marker sketch, the first one actually looks more like spontaneous and more energetic to me, and I'm still not able to replicate that. And I did notice that I'm more focused in, or the scale of the furniture and stuff is way bigger than, say, the sketch that I'm working on now. And even the marker brush sizes are kind of big, almost in the 80 excuse me, in the 80 to 100 sized marker brush size, and they look more cooler, and you can actually see more of the strokes, which I think adds to that marker-esque feel. So eventually I will be trying to replicate that even more. So once I've done the color phase, what I would do is focus on the adjustment layers, and I would often go for the color balance, the hue and saturation, and the levels. For the levels, I would just bump up the blacks to kind of make it more contrasted. For the hue and saturation, I would bring up the saturation usually to about 25%, but often I can go to 45 to 50% increase in saturation. And yeah, and I can sometimes use the gradient map adjustment layer to kind of just add more zing. And the gradient maps are set in an overlay mode. It just makes it more kind of powerful and more kind of coming out or coming at you, you know, or more just, it grabs your attention more compared to just a kind of a, say, a gradient map under a color mode. An overlay mode is more, to me, more, it's pretty close to a color dodge, but not really. So I hope I explained that enough. So yeah, the gradient maps, I think I was having some difficulty trying to find a kind of nice contrast for the shadows, and I believe it ended up being too blue, and I wasn't fully satisfied. I wanted to have some kind of contrasting hues, because in this sketch the colors so far are on the cool side, and I wanted something in the warm side to kind of complement the coolness of the sketch. So yeah. Oof. And by the way, I'm actually batching my videos. I mean, I've always batched my videos in some way, but I think it helps in productivity, you know, having to just batch your work. So I have like 4 videos in line, including this one that's recorded, and all I have to do now is kind of do the voiceovers and stuff, and just schedule the videos afterward, right? So I did have another sketch that's actually similar to this one, where the pen size is kind of the same, and the brush or the marker brush size is also the same, and yeah. So now you can see my work on the flat face, where I basically flatten the entire thing in a new folder, and I would use the color dodge tool, the the sponge tool, and the burn tool. And for the burn tool, I'll just darken up some of the darks, or any area that's kind of requires to be darkened, and the sponge tool for desaturating or saturating certain areas of interest, and then the color dodge tool to add that kind of bright effect. And it's actually a kind of a nice finisher for any sketch, I think. or even like digital paintings. I think they look good. So that's it. That is the sketch for you folks. And